Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 7 o'clock main news. In tonight's headlines, Israel and Hamas begin observing a temporary ceasefire that sets the stage for talks in Egypt on a deal over the Gaza Strip. As fighting with Syrian rebels continues, the Lebanese army regains control of one of its headquarters in the town of Irsal. Kurdish security forces clash with militants who are trying to extend their control on Iraq's largest dam. And heavy fighting erupts in Donetsk city as Ukrainian forces battle to retake the city from pro-Russia separatists. His Highness Deputy Emir and Crown Prince Sheikh Nawaf Al Ahmed Al Jaber Al Sabah received this morning at Sif Palace the acting National Assembly Speaker Mbarak Ibn Al Khrenij. A ceasefire between Israel and Hamas aimed at ending nearly a month of fighting went into effect today in the Gaza Strip. The temporary truce agreed to by both sides was to last for at least 3 days, during which Israel and Hamas are to hold indirect talks in the Egyptian capital Cairo in order to broker a deal that would prevent further cross-border violence. Meanwhile, Palestinian Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki said that his government was intending to apply for membership at the International Criminal Court this year, hoping to hold Israel responsible for violations of law and of war crimes in the Palestinian territories it occupies. Our correspondent in Gaza, Majd al-Wahidi, has the story.
After a month-long bloody offensive, Israel has pulled out all its ground forces and soldiers from Gaza. A temporary ceasefire went into effect this morning at 8 a.m. local time. This came after the Palestinian delegation in Egypt announced that both Israeli and Palestinian leaders have agreed on reaching a ceasefire agreement.
There is a progress happening in Cairo right now. The evidence of the humanitarian truce suggests that there is good news coming soon. Also, the Israeli delegation is heading to Cairo today. Perhaps all sides will reach a ceasefire agreement in which all the requirements of the resistance factions will be achieved.
4 weeks since Israel's Operation Protective Edge began, the loss of civilian lives has been immense. Thousands of houses have been destroyed, and scenes of bloodshed spread across the Gaza Strip are too much for any human being to bear. Human rights organizations say what has happened is more than a war, as hundreds of children and women died or made homeless due to Israel's military power. Despite all of this, people here are demanding a chance to rebuild their lives once again.
Since 8 years, we've been living under siege and destruction. How can we talk about a truce without ending the siege? How will we rebuild and reconstruct our houses and lands that were destroyed? We are just asking to end the siege so we can have a normal life. We do not ask to have the moon. We ask for our human rights.
The humanitarian ceasefire will be held for 3 days. However, only time will tell if peace and stability will be a reality or not. There has been several ceasefires before, but what came out of them was more death and destruction. You can kill any human being, but you cannot kill the idea of resistance and survival. This is what most Gazans are saying on the first day of calm after days of intense bloodshed. Majd al-Wahidi, Kuwait TV, Gaza.
A flight carrying humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza was due to leave Italy today with 30 tons of aid, including water purifiers, generators and blankets, to be handed over to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency in Jerusalem. Italy plans to donate another €2.5 million as part of its emergency aid plan for Gaza. The aid comes as the United Kingdom announced that it will donate an additional €2 million for almost 8,000 families caught up in the conflict in Gaza. The Lebanese army regained control of one of its headquarters in the border town of Irsal after it was briefly seized by militants. Dozens of Lebanese armoured personnel carriers, tanks and elite troops had surrounded the town a day earlier after Syrian rebels had attacked the town. The UN Security Council has backed Lebanon's military action against the armed groups, but called on Lebanese politicians to preserve national unity and refrain from any involvement in the Syrian crisis. The clashes in Irsal are the most serious spillover of violence from the civil war in Syria into Lebanon, spreading fears that Lebanon could become a new front in the neighbouring country's conflict. Kurdish security forces clashed with militants who are trying to extend their control in northern Iraq by seizing the country's largest dam. The group seized 2 oil fields in the predominantly Kurdish towns in the north this week, forcing thousands to flee their homes, and has threatened another key dam at Haditha. According to sources, the Kurds retook the Rabia border post with Syria and the nearby town of Sinjar from the militants after fierce fighting overnight. Heavy fighting has erupted in a suburb of the rebel stronghold of Donetsk in eastern Ukraine. Meanwhile, a spokesman for the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine claimed today that a group of Ukrainian soldiers were attacked by the rebels as they tried to return from Russian territory. He stated that 311 Ukrainian soldiers had made their way into Russia after using up all their ammunition. Of those, 195 had attempted to return today unarmed when they came under attack. The spokesman said no one had been injured in the assault and were now in a safe place. A man dressed in an Afghan army uniform opened fire on foreign troops at a military base today, killing at least 1 NATO soldier and wounding 15. A spokesman for Afghanistan's defense ministry said a terrorist in an army uniform opened fire on both local and international troops. A U.S. official said about a dozen victims of the attack were Americans and at least 1 American was killed. The attack took place at Camp Kargar, a base west of the capital, Kabul. High waves and strong currents hampered search and rescue efforts today for a ferry that capsized a day earlier in central Bangladesh, leaving hundreds of passengers trapped inside and feared dead. A Bangladesh cabinet minister said at least 125 people were presumed dead in yesterday's sinking of the vessel. Authorities said and survivors estimated that there had been about 250 to 300 passengers aboard the vessel, but the figure couldn't be confirmed because ferry operators of Bangladesh rarely maintain passenger lists. Many of the passengers aboard the vessel were returning from ancestral villages after celebrations of Eid al-Fitr, the festival marking the end of the Islamic fasting month of Ramadan. Scores of firefighters in central Sweden were fighting to extinguish a wildfire that has burned 150 square kilometers of forested land and killed at least 1 person. As helicopters were dropping water onto the fire in Västmanland province, northwest of the capital, Stockholm, about 1,000 people were evacuated from villages and towns threatened by the fire. Italy and France have sent firefighting planes to help contain the blaze, one of the biggest forest fires in Sweden in recent decades. It's unclear what sparked the fire, but authorities say unusually hot weather and dry conditions are fueling the flames. Heavy rain and landslides were slowing down rescue efforts and the delivery of desperately needed supplies to survivors in China as rescuers continued to sift through the rubble left by a 6.5 magnitude earthquake that struck the southwestern Yunnan province earlier. Meanwhile, thunderstorms and torrential downpours are forecast over the next 3 days for Ludian County, one of the worst affected areas, forcing thousands of troops, police and other aid workers to race against time. The death toll in what local officials say is the most destructive earthquake to strike the mountainous area in years is now 398, with 1,801 injured. And moving to local financial news, the 3 main indices of the Kuwait Stock Exchange ended today's trading session in the green as the price index gained 22 points and settled at the level of 7,166 points. The KSX 15 also put on about 2 points and registered at 1,190 points. The share of the real estate asset management company was the top gainer of the day, while that of the credit rating and collection company suffered the biggest loss during the session. For a chance to see our reports again, please visit our YouTube channel at MOI Kuwait News. And to recap tonight's news, here are the headlines once again. Israel and Hamas begin observing a temporary ceasefire that sets the stage for talks in Egypt on a deal over the Gaza Strip. As fighting with Syrian rebels continues, Lebanese army regains control of one of its headquarters in the town of Arsal. Kurdish security forces clash with militants who are trying to extend their control on Iraq's largest dam. And heavy fighting erupts in Donetsk city as Ukrainian forces battle to retake the city from pro-Russia separatists. Thank you for joining us.